C9 that relates to pesticides and toxicity controls. Again, the idea is that if we provide herbicides or if we provide pesticides inside or outside the buildings, that the staff is properly trained. And if we hire contractors, the contractors have what they call IPM certification, which is Integrated Pest Management Policy. The city was required to adopt one policy. In our case, the board is requiring that since we had some deficiencies, we must adopt an ordinance, which is same thing. And it's again, the requirements are that we follow the practices as well as we advertise so that public is aware of it, and we make sure that all places which sell the pesticides or herbicides have literature educating public on the proper use of those pesticides and herbicides. Provision C10, trash load reduction. The permit requires that the permittee first of all establish a baseline. In other words, measure all the trash which comes into the storm drain. Number two provision is that we should reduce that trash load by 40% by 2014, 70% by 2017, and 100% by 2022. City was lucky this year that we got a grant program from ABAG, so we have installed full trash capture devices in our downtown catch basins. We were actually required to cover at least 30% of the retail commercial area with those kind of devices. Our next requirement is that we must weigh those the trash we collect there, all the paper cups and everything. So the trash capture devices are good devices, but they do track trash, but it also requires more maintenance, because at least once a year we have to remove that, weigh it in, and document that we are reducing the trash load in stormwater by those certain amounts. Provision C11 relates to mercury control in stormwater, and this is for all permittees that every year we must reduce mercury load by 120 kilogram per year through 2018, and thereafter by 82 kilogram per year through year 2028. This is again collaborative effort, and the other collaborative related effort is that the permit requires that all permittees collaboratively study that the effectiveness of diverting the dry weather flow and the first flush into treatment plants. This is again very expensive idea. Let's go to provision 12 and 13. They are related to similar provisions for PCB controls, copper control, pesticide, selenium controls. Move on to low impact development. Starting December 1, we must require that the larger developments must treat on site their stormwater through infiltration, evapotranspiration, which is evaporation through plants, and also capture rainwater in cisterns and reuse that water. Now, the LID or low impact development will apply to businesses more than 10,000 square feet if they have auto service facilities, retail gasoline outlets, restaurants, uncovered parking lots, or if the city is widening a street, let's say we put another lane which exceeds 10,000 square feet, that project must have LID provisions. And if we build any paved trail wider than 10 feet, we must apply LID provisions. There are other provisions which require the cities to do the monitoring, and those are kind of very specialized technical monitoring of water quality. The next slide shows our partners in this. So the way the permit was issued, it applies to all 76 permittees, but the water board wanted all permittees in a county to have a collaborative one application. So in San Mateo County, it's CCAG which coordinated all the efforts, and they also created a program which is called San Mateo County-wide Water Pollution Prevention Program. Then there is all the, like I mentioned, non-profit organization called BASMA. Those are the two main collaborative agencies they not only just collaborate or help us develop the best management practices, but they also are required by Water Quality Control Board to do some testing so they can see the effectiveness of certain programs and they can assess their use. Major issues of the municipal regional permit. It requires that the permittees must have legal authority to enforce the permit requirements. In other words, we must make sure that our ordinance has adequate provisions. They also require that we have adequate staff assigned to provide the inspections, monitoring, education, those kind of things. There is also, most cities or permittees, when they complain about finances, the answer from the Water Control Board staff is that that's not any consideration because it's just a requirement of NPDES or the federal programs, and cities must come up with the money wherever it comes up with. And in our case, we have various funding sources. At CCAG level, there is a county-wide parcel tax. They are looking at that most probably that the revenue will not be adequate, and they will be looking for increase in that parcel tax. As far as cities costs are concerned, our guess is that this year, with the trash capture devices, storm drain cleaning, which we do before each rain, and pre-hot spot cleaning, that we have spent in the last year close to $50,000, and for proper monitoring, we may need to spend up to $100,000. And it's not just the Half Moon Bays alone, all permittees are feeling the pinch in this time, the economic times. As a result, the permittees have filed for what they call unfunded mandate test claim. This is a state's way that before we file any claim, we must file our test claim with the commission. The commission did agree that yes, the permittees had some merits in their argument that the permit is not just merely implementing the requirements of NPDES, but it goes beyond the requirements of NPDES and California water standards. However, one court in Los Angeles has reversed that, and now it's going up higher. So there are those kind of issues going there. So the main purpose of our this report was to, number one, to provide education to our citizens also, that they can help us by knowing more that it's primarily only stormwater which should go in the stormwater and not any pollutants. And secondly, that just to know that it's a very elaborate program and we have no choice but to follow it.
And Mo is exactly right. I don't want to give any indication that we don't think that the water quality is an important issue. It's a very important issue. There's a variety of trade-offs, and I think what I want you all to understand is the impact specifically on Half Moon Bay, and start to be able to assess are all of the various prescriptions and requirements and costs, does it really give you an incrementally enough improvement, is kind of where I'm worried about. Some of the more specific examples in Half Moon Bay include there was a mold issue on a playground equipment recently, and we were asked to power wash it. Well, we can't do that anymore unless we have a special one that comes in and vacuums up the water that's power washing the equipment. So you have an extreme additional expense, just as simple as trying to keep your playground equipment clean. We also I have 100% of my public works staff involved. They're required to go to monthly meetings. The reporting requirements have become incredible. And on top of that, I also have an additional $30,000 a year consultant that we've had to hire to try and fill out the reports. And on top of that, we're actually not doing enough. We are going to have to continue to find more budget and more time to address these activities when I have bigger issues, frankly, like graffiti, that I also now have a hard time cleaning sometimes because of these requirements. I think one of the themes that you heard in several of these slides, it's the burden of educating the public has been put onto local government, and I now have to send staff to special training, and then so I have to find time and budget for them to do that, and then I have to produce flyers and go, get that information out there, as well as all the monitoring requirements that have been put in the city, again, without any funding source. So my primary concern is about the lack of funding that comes with these mandates, and that is the reason that the test claim has been filed. So I'm sure that Mo can answer any additional questions that you have.
Just from a budgeting standpoint, we almost have to have a full-time equivalent, if not more, just dedicated for the reporting and some of the actions of this. And I don't think we've thought of that from a budgeting. I mean, I think you've allocated resources, whether it's some public works or some of the engineering staff or even planning. Somebody touches this as well as yourself. So I don't think until now I've realized the extent of this. There's almost a whole person has to be hired.
Absolutely, it's at least a full person, and as you get in a smaller city, it burdens us disproportionately. I think that's the other message I want you to understand, is that even though we're a small city, we have to do everything that cities of 100,000 or 1 million people have to do. It also becomes problematic from managing it in the budget, because you're right, it's all these different little pieces everywhere, and it just becomes harder and harder to perform.
May I add to that also that it's perhaps more than one full-time person, because the requirements are that for all construction sites, active construction sites, after each rain, our inspector must inspect it, and if there are deficiencies, we must give them the written notice. If within 10 days that deficiency is not removed, we must proceed with code enforcement. So there's attorneys, staff, legal staff, and code enforcement activities. So it's much more involved. And our maintenance staff, they have street sweeping program is part of this. The drain inlet vacuum cleaning once a year, trash capture devices now, maintaining the letters on those. And for all our construction projects, we need to make sure that the drain inlets are covered with the fabric. Some inspector verifies that it's done. We need to monitor that. We need to report those. So it's more than one person, yes.